I want to welcome everybody here to the Strand tonight. As a way of introduction, I'm Nancy Bass-Wyden, and I own the Strand along with my dad, who's back there. And also my mom's sitting next to him. It's a real family event. The Strand was founded by my grandfather, Ben Bass, 83 years ago, around the corner on New York's famous Book Row. And tonight we are all here in one of the world's gastronomic capitals. So it is thrilling to welcome the founders of the restaurant Bible, Tim and Nina Zagat. So they rarely do these events, so we are particularly grateful. Thank you. This started as a hobby in 1979. Zagat's survey is now the world's trusted leading provider of information on where to eat, drink, stay, and play. Nina and Tim are the dynamic duo. Aside from his role of CEO of Zagat, Tim has served in various prominent civic, cultural, and charitable capacities. Currently on the board member of Partnership for New York, which is the World Travel and Tourism Council, and NYC Company, which is the official marketing, promotion, and tourism arm of New York City, which he chaired twice. And Nina oversees the company's global operations and expansion, including its entry into U.S. and international markets, leisure categories and content platforms, web and wireless ventures. They received numerous awards. Nina was named one of the leading women entrepreneurs of the world by Star Group in 2001, and one of Crane's Top Tech 100, and also one of Crane's New York 100 Most Influential Women in 2007. I remember when the Strand started carrying the Zagat survey, which was about 30 years ago. At the time, we were all worried that people would be hesitant about the idea of user-generated reviews. During those days, the restaurant guides were all based on expert reviewers like the New York Times. And of course, fast forward to today, and the web is based on opinions of reviewers. So, not surprisingly, the Zagats were way ahead of their time. And the Zagat surveys have consistently been annual bestsellers for the Strand bookstore. So a little bit about tonight's format. Tim and Nina are going to discuss their guides in New York City culinary landscape. Then we'll like to take your questions. If you don't mind, we're going to use this roving microphone. So if you could, so everybody can hear you. So if you could stand up, and I'll hand you the microphone before you speak. Then they're going to sign copies of the guides for you, which you can purchase downstairs on your way out of the store. I just want to remind everybody that it is officially December, and don't you think a signed copy would make a good gift for, well, just about everyone. So please join me in welcoming New York icons and wonderful people, Tim and Nina Zagat, to the Strand.
Let me just say a couple of quick things, and then Nina will take a little history and talk about the picture, and I will make quips as best I can. Number one, this is one of the great bookstores in the world, and we have always loved this. It's not just to sell a lot of our books, but it's just one of the great places that New York needs places like this.
Yeah, I wanted to say that we loved the Strand before we had Zagat survey.
Second, Nina may have been voted one of the 100-something women in the world, but after 45 years of looking her over, she's my number one woman.
Thank you.
And I'll vote her for her. Usually when we speak, I do a survey first, and I ask you what you'd like to hear, because we can keep speaking until next week, and I don't think that would be very useful or a good useful time. There are several things that we can speak about. One is the history of the Zagat survey, what we've done and where we're going. How many of you would like to hear that? Number two is the revolution in American food as a reflection of revolution in society, American society, during the last 30 or 40 years. How many would you like to hear about that? And then there's the things that were so outrageous that we couldn't print them, or at least our lawyers said we couldn't print them. How many of you would like to hear that? Well, we're going to try to give you all of those things in 15 minutes and leave you enough time to ask questions. You may have seen, this is the papers last few days, we did a survey of the airlines and the airports, and outtakes are things where people say things that you just don't want to say connected to the subject. But for example, a few outtakes about the airlines. The uncomfortable serve the inedible by the indifferent. You need air marshals principally to protect passengers from the crew. I'm sorry, sir, but we've discontinued legroom. Economy class is like the Baton Death March, only with carry-on luggage. And they go on and on and on, and then a couple of restaurant outtakes. This restaurant suffers from delusions of adequacy, also known as Ebola Cafe. I took a doggy bag home. The dog refused it. Waiters seem to be just back from the jihad. Now, we had one of the quotes that I thought, this is some years ago, I thought it was a little too risque, and I went to some of our women editors and I said, do you think this is something you can publish? And they said, don't worry, put it in, it's good. And it was about the restaurant, one of my last trip by sea. We described the restaurant as having a wonderful beef Wellington, firelight, it was very romantic, and everybody, a lot of the men are proposing there, it's very, very calm. And then the quote was, if this place doesn't get you laid, nothing will. Now, it turned out I was right. We got letters from everywhere saying, this is terrible, you shouldn't have said this. This is something my kids might actually read. And but there was almost all of them were from women, except for one guy who was the angriest. He said we didn't live up to our representations. So, Nina, why don't you take care of the other two portions of our voting, our history, where we're going, and on top of that, tell everybody in 5 minutes the history and the changes in food in America during the last 5 years. She's fast, believe me, she's really good.
I think I'll take the part on where we're going. We started off with books, and in no way that we could have ever imagined the size and the whole concept of our guides just were exactly what fit on a computer screen, and even more so on a mobile screen, so that it was just natural for us to move into those other areas. And it's kind of amazing, because when we started out, we went to all the major publishers in New York and asked them if they wouldn't publish our guide. And this was after we had done it as a hobby for several years. And we started out just doing it as a hobby, just for fun, just because we couldn't find a place to have dinner with friends when it was 5 o'clock, and we'd get a call from a friend and say, well, where should we go tonight? There was no easy way to make a decision. And all of our friends pretty much felt the same way. And that's how, at a wine tasting group, we started taking everybody's experiences and having them vote on restaurants separately, rating food, decor, service, and cost, and giving us pithy, witty comments about their experience. And then when we did that for several years, and it got to be much more expensive than we felt we could do for a hobby, we went around to all the different publishers to see if they wouldn't publish our guide. Originally, it was just on two sides of a legal sheet of paper, but we thought we should put it into an actual guide form. Well, every publisher turned us down, and they turned us down for all the reasons that you might imagine. First, they said nobody was interested in what other people thought. They wanted to hear from experts, as Nancy had said. They said that the whole concept we had didn't work because nobody wanted to have such a little short description of a place. They wanted to have a much more elaborate description, just the kind of thing that we didn't want, because if you wanted to make a quick decision, you didn't want to read through 3 pages of information about the lighting, the tablecloths, how the sauce was made. You wanted to get down to the essential information. And also they thought that our concept to have this very small guide, which was even significantly smaller than in terms of thickness, although about the same size in terms of the front, that it would get lost on the shelves of a bookstore and wouldn't work. And we solved that problem by making lucite to put them in. But when everybody turned us down, we basically had two choices. One was to stop and give up the idea of doing the guide, and the other was to do it ourselves. What did we decide? Well, we weren't about to give it up, so we went ahead and did it ourselves.
There are a couple of things that went by at the time. I had 2 publishers that were 2 major publishers that reported to me in my job at that time. And when you get turned down by people who report to you, you know you have a problem. And we were turned down by them. My uncle was the financier behind one of the major publishers, which had done the New York Times guide for a number of years. And he turned us down. He was one of the few who told us why we were being turned down. He pointed out the size was wrong. He said they didn't like people who were not interested in local books. Publishers only wanted national books. And so he was nice enough. He also told us how many books the Times sold. And so 3 years later, when we were selling more books in 1 month than they sold in a year, we came back and we dedicated the book to it. So things do sometimes work out despite the most knowledgeable experts not thinking they will. One of the other things about this, when we first started doing it, the printer said, no problem, you can get on this wonderful press. That has some funny name, the name of it.
Yeah.
But they said, look at this enormous press, it's as long as this space. And they said, you're not going to have any competition to get on press, because whenever you need to be on, there's nobody else doing these books. Well, over time, I think you'll find there are more and more of these books being done this size. So we regard that as something of an accomplishment over the years.
Anyway, we started with restaurants, then we started to expand to cover food sources and shopping and hotels, resorts and spas, airlines, as Tim said, that we just came out with a new survey this week.
Nightlife.
Golf.
All kinds of things. Movies, music, theater.
Everything that people really love to do and want to share their experiences, and where they realize that when a lot of other people share their experiences too, you get a lot more reliable information than you would ever get from a single expert that has their own predisposition, their own views about things, which are great when you want to read a critic and really understand exactly what their point of view is. But our content is really gauged towards helping people make decisions for themselves, to empower them to have the information easily available through short reviews, through ratings of categories that are helpful,